All right. Hi, everybody. It's our CFB Talk 136. It is Tuesday night. This is when we chat with you. It's going to be an opportunity to talk some college football. It's the off season. We've got things coming together. The NFL draft is coming up, obviously, this week. We're going to have somebody there covering it. So look out for some tweets live from the NFL draft. Our first time as a credentialed media team covering the draft. But other than that, my name's Bob Akayeri. It's Thursday night, here to talk to you about whatever college football stories you want to discuss. Feel free to hit request. It's at the bottom left of the Twitter app. For some reason, this has been forever, like years. You have to talk on Twitter Space, you have to use a Twitter app. And I kind of get it. It keeps it sort of standardized. So you're not using a billion different browser settings to try and figure out how to connect. But would love to hear from you. Oh, I see Thax up here. We'll go ahead and let him up. And let's see here. Yeah, it's been interesting to see what's been going on. This has been a fairly busy week. I think after the sort of extra slow month and a half that happens after the season wraps up, people kind of focus on the NFL. And then I think everybody takes sort of a deep breath. Things are starting to pick up again. But Thak, what's going on? How are you, man?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. As you whip around the college football coverage, man, kind of a dry week, but I feel like the hot developing story right now is all eyes on Colorado.
Yes.
Um, uh, the most recent egregious thing that Mr. Deion Sanders has done allegedly is not release film for a transferring student. Um, I mean, I think it looks back at that original meeting he had with the team when he said, "quote I'm bringing my own luggage and it's Louis Vuitton." And from that moment on, I knew that it was not going to end. I think Dion's time was probably not going to be remembered super fantastic if he's making those remarks, but I don't know. What are
Yeah,
your
that's
thoughts?
been definitely one of the popular stories on our CFB is that tight end, I believe it's a tight end who says they didn't release film for him. I mean, to be fair, the flip side of that is Colorado. I mean, if you guys haven't seen the numbers, Colorado has blown the roof out of the number of transfers out of any FBS program, as far as I know. I believe any FBS program, let alone P5. I mean, the Athletic crunched the numbers. They've lost or they're transferring out 46 players. 46. The Power 5 average is 16 transfers. So, and second place is Arizona State, which makes sense. They also had a coaching change. They had 29 transfers, but 46. So part of me is like, well, is it just a backlog of getting film out? I don't even know at this point. I mean, it's a totally different ball game over there. Although their spring game was extremely popular, we saw footage of that stadium, which is Folsom Field, still one of the most beautiful places to see a college football game. But the just completely packed. They had that. They did the cute thing with the super fan, the nice old lady. I think it was Popham was her last name. She's a twin. Her twin sister had passed, but they'd been there forever, so she did the kickoff. But yeah, no, I mean they have absolutely seen massive roster change. I was looking at how people are reacting to that, and I agree with the sense it's like this is either going to be a super success or a complete disaster. I mean, it's almost hard to see how it could go either way, or it'll go in between and frustrate everybody, so we won't know. I mean, are we? To me, I'm like, who's next in the transfer portal? Is it going to be the mascot Chip? I wouldn't say Ralphie. Ralphie's going to stay there forever, but maybe the mascot Chip. They'll replace him with I don't know, whatever NDSU's Thundar. I just looked it up. Wow, that's an awesome name. The costume mascot of North Dakota State, the Bison, is Thundar. So maybe Chip will go out and they'll get Thundar as their new mascot. But yeah, it's definitely been. I mean, this week at the very least. In a way, I was kind of thinking about that too. I mean, is that going to help? Because the attention is definitely there. As many of you know, ESPN only showed their spring game. Of course, ESPN's having their own problems. They're apparently going to do, I believe, 3 rounds of layoffs, is what they've said. So that's going to apparently put some pressure on some of their on-air folks. Although, yesterday it was confirmed one of those people who is absolutely not going to leave, and it comes from, it's funny too, the New York Post, say what you will, they're sports media reporting, like reporting on the actual coverage of sports is pretty accurate. They said, Chris Fowler is going to stick around, so probably one of the more beloved people. Which also the twist is he's also a Colorado alum, and he's openly admits, like, he can set aside his fandom, but he is absolutely a Buff at heart. And when you could tell when he was calling that 90, that probably that very old, I forgot, I keep adding to her age, but that very old Colorado fan who did the ceremonial kickoff at the spring game, you could just listen to the clip. It's on, I think, ESPN's Twitter. You can hear the emotion in his voice because he knows exactly who that is, and you can tell the fan. It's a rare moment where the fan, Chris Fowler, feels like he's kind of bleeding through, which I think is nice. I mean, because in that situation, how can you? I mean, who's going to hate an old lady kicking a football? I mean, come on. So, yeah, again, if you'd like to join the conversation, we'd love to have you up here. Just hit request. Hey, what's up, Beck?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where Dion will go. Of course, I think another interesting kind of tidbit. I don't know if this was this week or last week. You've got the Pruitt trial. I guess you can call it a trial proceeding. Allegedly with Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, going in the Jeremy Pruitt / Tennessee meeting room, which was rather interesting. Also, something interesting: Western Michigan scheduling Michigan at the Big House for 2026. I think that'll be an interesting game. Western Michigan's one of my teams that I sort of have pegged to not make the jump, but I think going to have some significant success in the next coming years. They're building something pretty cool out there.
I remember the Knoxville News Sentinel had a had a funny article where they were trying to imagine if they made the Pruitt hearings televised. Do that for the off season. Give us something entertaining to watch. That was they never do it, but man, that would be something else just to hear all of that with that saga with Jeremy Pruitt's tenure at Tennessee, which doesn't seem to want to go away. Even though I know and I respect the fact that Tennessee fans would like that just to vanish. Another kind of rivalry that's being renewed is Texas State is going to now start playing Sam Houston State again because they both were FCS programs. Texas State obviously moved up and changed their name to Texas State. They used to be, I believe, like Southwest Texas State. And then Sam Houston, some of you may remember, is going to be joining FBS this season along with Jacksonville State. It's going to be nice to have a few more programs out there. And hey, for some money games, now they count as FBS programs. But they're going to be renewing that rivalry at Houston's NRG Stadium. So it's kind of fun to see some of those things coming back. I think it'll be fun to see that. I mean, two G5s could be a packed stadium. It seems like a lot of their fans from both of those programs are excited about that. I fully admit when I read that those two teams are going to be playing each other again, the first thing I do is I see an RCFB, like, how are people reacting to it? Their fans think it's the best thing ever. So that tells you it really is this isn't just some nonsense. This is two big fan bases. So good for them. I mean, they're two big schools, not necessarily big in sports, but it's great to see them playing. The transfer portal, the one part I did want to mention is the big story, at least there in terms of changes, is seeing Georgia's defensive tackle, Bear Alexander. Probably, I know in some of these rankings of who were the big names in the portal, he's transferred to USC. Now, how well he does there, who knows? I mean, Lincoln Riley certainly loaded that offense last year, and then the defense. Well, all of us saw the Cotton Bowl. So, I mean, will that help strengthen the defense? Not sure. They still have Alex Grinch as their defensive coordinator, but that, along with some of those other folks they've brought on to the USC roster in the offseason, we'll see if that defense can match the insanity of what their offense has been doing. Speaking of the offense, only because Caleb Williams is obviously not in the draft this season. It was interesting to see the Athletic had, I believe it was a Bruce Feldman article that said, he is he really, would he have beat all of the current quarterbacks had he been in the draft? I don't know that. I think I agree. It's a little bit. Everyone always thinks there's a better quarterback in the next draft. I mean, once in a while you get someone like an Andrew Luck, someone who's just like on a different level. But Not sure if that's going to be at Thack. I know you wanted to add something to this. And again, if any of you out there want to join in, just hit request. I'd love to have you up here.
Yeah, and I think I talked about this 3 weeks ago. I think Bear is a pretty large loss for Georgia, and they've got depth obviously at those positions, but that player is something else, and I think he's going to contribute a lot to USC. And I know you're a big USC guy, so I wouldn't be surprised if we possibly saw a USC college football playoff this year. Obviously. Um, there's a tough road ahead for them. But I think it's a big loss for Georgia. I think people are coming in really hot on Georgia, and understandably so. They're a great team. Kirby Smart, good depth. But you're talking about losses at Washington. You're talking about losses Bear now on the defense. And man, I don't know if it's just going to be a smooth ride for Georgia this year, as people are expecting.
Well, I think really the biggest question is obviously going to be changing a quarterback, but Georgia is just such a solid. It's such a solid program right now. They are Alabama's, you know, if not equal, they're at this point in that zone. They are in that zone where they're climbing into the realm of Alabama in terms of just loading in talent and having a coaching staff that can develop it out. So I don't know if Alexander is a big as big of a loss for Georgia as it is a gain for USC. I think USC definitely got the net benefit there because that defense is certainly not comparable to what the Dogs had. But this is an interesting question. So, and looks like we have someone else who wants to join in here. Let's go ahead and let you up, Tyler Painter. Would love to have you and hear your thoughts on just about anything. Just feel free to unmute. Would love to hear from you. Looks like you're up here, Tyler Painter 16. Sometimes it takes a little bit to unmute. And also, it's weird if you've never spoken live on a Twitter space, it's kind of a weird time jump. Sometimes you don't realize you're on a slight time delay with how we're talking. And then when you get on the stage, it brings you right up to live time. So that threw me off the one time I was a guest on a Twitter space. Suddenly, I felt like I jumped 5 seconds into the future. But if you do join, it looks like he wasn't able to connect. Just keep that in mind. It's kind of a funny jump when you join us up here. But again, if you'd like to join in the conversation, feel free. Thack, I know you were about to say something when he dropped off.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think Georgia's. I'm not pounding down on them too much. I think they brought honestly one of the best wide receivers in college football, Dominic Lovett. Obviously left Missouri. I think they brought one of the best wide receivers in the transfer portal, and it was a position that they were sort of not historically lacking, but recently lacking in a decent wide receiver number one. So it'll be interesting to see, especially with Brock Bowers and Dominic Lovett. They got a lot of options down the field. They just got to pick a right guy at quarterback, and I think they'll be okay. That's the big question. I think people underrate how important Stetson Bennett was to that offensive scheme.
Yes, absolutely, and I think that he's the biggest. I mean, and also one of the tangible things. It's interesting too. Speaking of quarterbacks, it's fun to see who's going to go first in the draft. I mean, there's all this. It's interesting to see. Like, has there been some like there's all this rumbling on Twitter about Will Levis over at Kentucky, whether or not he's going to go number one or his odds suddenly jumped significantly. I mean, looking around, I still don't see him. I mean, and I'm not saying my own personal opinion. I'm saying looking around, like some of the bigger, like Pro Football, PFF and the Athletic and the various people there. Seems like I'm seeing a lot more towards Bryce Young likely going to the Panthers, but I'm not sure about that. By the way, if anyone has thoughts on that, would love to hear from you. Zach, what's your thoughts on who might go where in the draft?
Oh, I'm convinced these NFL draft guys absolutely don't watch a lick of college football at all, and that would make a lot of sense. Let's talk about Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, both quarterbacks that lost to Vanderbilt last year. So I don't know. I think the obvious pick is Bryce Young, and people. I don't know if you were seeing this tweet allegedly. according to somebody on the gambling subreddit, some gambling subreddit, allegedly Will Levis was saying to friends and family he thought the Panthers were going to pick him and change the betting line. So I'm convinced these NFL fans don't really watch a lick of college football.
Well, hey, to be fair, Josh Allen, I remember I actually had a chance to interview him twice at Mountain West Media Days. I mean, Wyoming was still struggling because it's Wyoming. It's hard to bring people out there. The fact that Craig Bowl can even get them into bowl games on a regular basis is a miracle. And I always, when we sometimes hear Wyoming fans get really upset that they're not going up to the next level, I'm like, guys, you are in the. I mean, I've driven through the state of Wyoming. Oddly enough, I haven't driven. I actually haven't driven through Laramie. I've driven through other parts, but it is like getting young men that want to go out there is a tough sell. And then you're competing on a totally different level. The fact that but the point is, when they were talking about analysis for a lot of these guys, you look at who their surrounding talent was, and obviously Allen worked out because everyone, they were hot on him for 2 years in a row until he finally could be drafted. So it's interesting too, although it's weird to say that about Anthony Richardson, because it's not like Florida isn't a school that can recruit. But I mean, it sounds like he just blew everyone away, like when it comes to what he has with his abilities and how he did, given I guess given who was around him. But yeah, he's been one of the striking ones in terms of like what happened on the field versus where he seems to be in a lot of draft lineups. I've seen him as high as number 2.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing is, I guess you never really know. I'm from St. Louis originally, and unfortunately didn't have much of a chance to watch the 2001 Rams, 2000 Rams. So a grocery bagger from UNI won a Super Bowl and I guess 2, and is in the NFL Hall of Fame. So what do I know about NFL talent? But you're telling me 2 guys that lost to Vanderbilt and have some issues in their college play, pretty large issues. Richardson's got some interception issues. It's interesting to see his draft stock come out of almost nowhere from a college football fan. Obviously, he's a real athletic guy, and he's made a couple good plays. I think he's also made quite a lot of bad plays.
One of the things that struck me was, and I'd forgotten this had happened, because they were talking about, I was reading an article about who some of the best returning quarterbacks are at the G5 level. And oh God, his name just slipped my mind. But UTSA, their quarterback, he's going into his 7th year. First of all, that's just stunning. But obviously, Jeff Traylor, you can't the 3 best his 3 seasons at UTSA are the 3 best seasons they've ever had. They lost 1 conference game in the last 2 years, and they've been this sort of potential New Year's 6 spoiler. And when the playoff expands, who knows? They would be technically a potential playoff team, backing into that. But that quarterback, they got him to stay even after a tremendous season because of NIL, which I thought was interesting too, because there was another interesting kind of analysis about how the NIL situation is sort of affecting the draft a little bit, because some of the players that might have come out are now staying because of the money they're getting there. Especially, I mean, and it makes sense if you're projected as a late round pick, like 7th, I should say late, like 6th or 7th rounder, or possibility of being a free agent, you might make more money sticking around for your final year. And that is something that is starting to come into play, according to some of the NFL scouts that have been interviewed in some of these articles. Looks like we have someone else who wants to join. Oh, hey, yeah, awesome. Let's get Quinn Shonism, our Ole Miss friend. What's going on? We'll let him up. And when he gets up here, hey, what's going on? How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. What's going on out there?
I was just wondering, with the do you think San Diego State will be moving to the Pac-12 anytime soon?
That's a good question. I think San Diego State, first of all, they've got so many things going for them, and they are the natural, like, if you can't get USC and UCLA, because now they're locked into the Big Ten, good luck getting them out of there without some sort of insane sum of money, which Pac-12 ain't getting anytime soon. San Diego State's your next best option. People always seem to San Diego State's San Diego is kind of funny. It's a huge population. People don't realize, like, in most states, it would be the biggest city in the state, but it's overshadowed because it's just under Los Angeles. And the only reason they're not contiguous is because Camp Pendleton, the big Marine base, is the only, you can't develop that. So that's the only reason those two cities haven't just merged completely into one. So San Diego State has always second banana. It always, I mean, to USC and UCLA. I remember, it's so funny. 2000, gosh, I can remember back in 2000, I went to the San Diego Sports Hall of Fame. And what struck me once you got past, obviously, the Chargers and all the, the Padres and all the pro teams, was that they had, college football area, and it was USC and UCLA, and then, and a couple of things about San Diego State. So that in a way symbolized the dominance they had in Southern California over there. But that said, San Diego State's been building something. I mean, that Snapdragon Stadium is a lovely stadium. I mean, that they had a really bad timing on that first game, and we'll set that aside. But the stadium itself has been a wonderful development, and they've got the fact that they've got a big alumni base. San Diego State's an enormous university, so it would at least bring that area back in. It would give teams an excuse to go down there. It would help a little bit with recruiting. So San Diego State has found itself as one of the more attractive G5 programs. I mean, back in the day when the Big East was trying to survive before it kind of collapsed and became the American as we know it now, they actually got San Diego State, Boise State, and TCU that were going to join them. I don't remember if Boise State wasn't going to join them. They actually said they'll stay in the Mountain West. But TCU, and I remember there must be a handful of shirts out there because TCU specifically had the Horned Frog because they were in the Mountain West. So the Horned Frog with Big East underneath it because they were hyped. They were like, we're going into what was then considered a power conference. And then obviously that all collapsed because the rest of the conferences started shifting, and San Diego State ended up back in the Mountain West where they are, and they remain. But they've always had that desire to move up, and now, as you mentioned it, the fact is, with the departures that have occurred, they may be the most attractive team for adding someone from the G5, at least in terms of media market. SMU as well, but only to the Pac-12, I would say, because the Big 12's already got that market locked down. The Pac-12 and SMU, that would make some sense because you're expanding your footprint to the Metroplex. But San Diego State's attractive to both conferences because it's Southern California and it's the only team left. There is no other FBS program there. San Diego's FCS, but they're non-scholarship FCS, and that is a tiny campus. It's a small Catholic university. I've been to it's a beautiful campus. Actually, I'd say go visit that one over San Diego State if you want to see pretty buildings on a campus. But no, they're never going to be able to compete at that level. And then you got UC San Diego, which doesn't care about sports. UC Irvine that doesn't care about sports. I mean, then you get the general Southern California attitude where maybe they might have a good basketball team, but football ain't it. So it's a good question, though. I think it is, and I think San Diego State would be part of the Pac-12 trying to climb its way back up if they can manage to do it, only because that would add potential revenue by bringing in a lot more television. Because again, the bottom line is, if you really are thinking about P5 expansion, or at least P5 conferences trying to expand their membership, it's TV market. Even that's why even back in the day, everyone was just scratching their head when the Big Ten added Rutgers. I mean, they were trying to claim that New York, New Jersey market. That was what made them valuable. That's what made Maryland valuable. You're adding the Baltimore, D.C. market. So that's where San Diego State kind of fits in. Looks like we have someone else who wants to join in. I'm going to go ahead and welcome in Mark Hill. So, Mark, welcome. If you just hit unmute, we'd love to talk to you.
Hey, man, thanks very much. Wyoming fan here. I don't know how many notes you
got. Hey, what's going on? We were just talking about them.
Oh, really? Oh, man, I joined late.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, we were saying, like, sometimes in the draft, because some people are talking about, I mean, my friend Thak here was talking about Anthony Richardson and how, even though he was at Florida, he had some pretty bad losses. But at the same time, we're like, Josh Allen, man, I mean, people, because I had an opportunity to talk to Josh Allen a couple of Mountain West, I should say, media days before his final two seasons. And I mean, I remember the hype behind him. But I mean, obviously, Wyoming was still struggling because it's Wyoming, and it's a different world to try and recruit out there. But people could see his talent, and obviously, he's worked out. So that was kind of catching you up on the earlier conversation on that. But what are your thoughts, Mark?
Well, so actually, I'll say one thing about Josh Allen. I remember when he came into a game, you could see that kid was kind of magical to begin with. Now, we didn't know that he was the NBA, NFL kind of magic he turned into, but that kid had a cannon from day one, and he had guts. He was strong and he was fast. I mean, you really could see a difference immediately. It was weird that nobody wanted to offer that dude a scholarship. I mean, he promptly then got injured and had to sit out the rest of the season, but came back strong. But I was going to ask you about, since you were talking about San Diego State joining the Pac-12. It's interesting. The Pac-12. I want your thoughts on this. Haven't they backed themselves into a corner because they're so focused on academics? And man, they can't take San Diego State. It's a state school. It's not in the UC system. They have no respect for their academics. They really have, seems to me anyway, have backed themselves into a corner with this. What are your thoughts?
I agree. Before, I think they got really in a desperate situation with USC and UCLA bailing. That would have been part of the argument, because that was a classic thing. Why will they never take Boise? Why will they never take Fresno State or San Diego State? And
it should have been BYU and Utah, really, right?
Yeah, and I mean that was always the snootiness of it. And BYU, the excuse was so called because it wouldn't play on Sundays. Some thought UC Berkeley in particular had some animosity towards them, but it was never necessarily here or there. Although now, I guarantee you, they would love to have BYU as part of their lineup, because and of course the Big 12 got him. But I think that academic snootiness definitely went away when UCLA and USC left, but also because, I mean, remember UCLA and Berkeley got into a real fight with the regents, like within the realm of the regents. Like, I guess, we've talked about we nicknamed it calimony, and I'm not going to say we're the first ones to say that, but a couple of people came up with that because it just lends itself. Because now UCLA has to pay to the UC regents to basically help give Cal some of the money they're getting from the Big Ten. That, I think, shattered a lot of those traditional kind of things that were associated with the conference, because now I think they're just it's desperate to survive. So, but I hear you. I mean, that's exactly what it used to be like, and it seems like the rules have just been completely pulled from under us. Because I mean, I think San Diego State and Southern Methodist would be kind of interesting. They'd almost replace USC in some ways. They're kind of a private school. I mean, so is TCU, but they're a private school, snooty in some reputations. I mean, they would fit right in that USC slot. That just, and I say this as a USC alumnus. I know. I mean, I'm very self-aware. So I mean, they would slide right into that slot. But not necessarily have the more recent kind of developments there. But man, I don't know. And just speaking of the Mountain West, if San Diego State left Mountain West, I'd be curious to see what they do in response to that, because now they've got a new commissioner, and there's overtures that are constantly being made, and they always seem to be the best. Kind of, I mean, Fresno State, I mean, they're going out of their way to try and get into the Big 12, it sounds like. I think they realize they're not necessarily going to be attracted to the Pac-12 because they already have so many California schools, but they're really going out there. I mean, they're trying to, they narrowly lost, I guess, a municipal ballot measure to try and increase taxes to fund improvements to the Fresno State athletics. But I mean, people don't realize, I mean, Fresno State, of the G5 on the West Coast, they're one of the most insane fan bases. If you ever know, I grew up in the Central Valley, California. They love the Bulldogs in that part of the state, particularly as you get closer to Fresno. So they're trying to go out of their way. Their mayor is like a big diehard, trying to get Fresno State into the Big 12. So a lot of this stuff is just really pushing a lot of things in the question of who could go where. I mean, Colorado State's the other one too. I mean, I could see either of those conferences being interested, although I think Colorado to the Big 12 would be more interesting. You keep rumors that might be. That's that awkward time for the Mountain West. Kind of just sitting back and having to respond to some of this stuff. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Well, so all right, a couple things here. First off, I didn't know you were a USC guy. You're very open minded, actually, for a big school fan. I will say, you respect the little guys. I appreciate that. Uh, San Diego State, having been a huge Mountain West fan forever, San Diego State fan base seems like a super apathetic fan base. I mean, they're a huge population in this beautiful, gorgeous city. And I get the impression they just don't give a damn. Fresno State is different. They've had genuine success. Those people care. They represent that whole Central Valley, I guess. I mean, I don't know the geography super well, but Fresno seems like it'd be a great fit for the Big 12 culturally. They're kind of a farm school, sort of. They've got the passion. Honestly, I think Wyoming would be a good fit for the Big 12 culturally as well. But Colorado State, my God, they have always had so much potential. Honestly, Wyoming has as much, probably more sports, potential than Colorado State does, but more history anyway. And that is just given the locations of the two schools and the respective, resources, Colorado State should blow them away. Colorado State has always been a sleeping giant. They don't want to win for some reason. I don't know what.
Yeah, Colorado State, I'll give you, they've thrown a lot at their facilities as well, and I agree they are a sleeping giant in a lot of ways, and they have that passionate fan base. I completely agree with your characterization of San Diego State, and the more I think about it, especially juxtaposed against Fresno State, I think weather and relaxation have something to do with it. San Diego, I always tell people, if you like the weather in LA, go to San Diego. San Diego is like the perfect natural weather environment. Like if I don't know, like apocalypse happens, like apocalyptic, like dystopian future where we lose all power and we're all just sort of like, I live in Minnesota now. Like I would leave here immediately for obvious reasons, but I would go to San Diego, and I would probably be one of a billion people trying to go to San Diego and I guess fight everyone there to try and live there because the weather is just perfect and natural. But it breeds apathy in a lot of ways. And I say this again, the Southern California attitude, just anywhere from Malibu all the way down to San Diego. It's just kind of how it is. Meanwhile, the Central Valley, it's a billion degrees all summer long. I remember I had to go back a couple of years ago when my thermostat on my car said 117 degrees. I mean, it is like Phoenix, except it is not a big city. So, I mean, that's all there is. And that maybe that's what's driving the passion. Wyoming's big issue is going to be population because TV market is what makes or breaks things. And Colorado State, they can kind of say they're drawing on Denver, but it's not as strong as simply being in the market like San Diego State or SMU. We're slowly going to wrap up, but I see we have one more person who wants to join in who's been listening for a while. Scotty Dukitz, or Scott Butler, pardon me. I see you have your name actually on there. I want to let you up as well, just because I want to have an opportunity just to have your last take on it too. Scott, what's going on?
How you guys doing tonight?
Great. How are
Pretty
you?
Good. I usually don't talk on these platforms. I usually just listen, but you guys are talking a lot of things that are close to me, so I'll chime in a little bit, especially Mark. I'm from Wyoming as well, but I'm a big Texas Tech fan. I wanted to get his thoughts on the first game of the season for Wyoming with Tech running there.
And, it's in Laramie.
Midland,
it's
Texas
in Laramie.
now,
For those who aren't aware, Texas Tech is going to be playing up at Wyoming. So that's a huge part of it, too. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
You're good.
I was just going to say, this is super relevant for me because I live in Midland, Texas, so just up the road down the road from Lubbock. We are going to get our butts kicked. Texas Tech is going to walk up and down Wyoming and embarrass us. It's going to be ugly. I hate to report that. God damn it, pisses me off.
I tell my friends they better be in cardio shape though, Tech, because 20 feet's not no joke.
I love that you say that, but the teams that are in good shape bring their in shapeness and their oxygen, and I don't know, maybe that helps us in the second half, but I wouldn't be too worried about it.
Also, talking about the draft, you guys were talking briefly about the draft and Josh Allen and people that they get graded high and stuff that you don't really hear about in college that much. Texas Tech's Tyree Wilson, I've heard he could go number 2 to the Texans or Arizona at 3, I believe, might fall down to the Lions at 6. Just wanted to get your thoughts on where you guys see him going, and do you think he'll be a great pro or not?
I think he's definitely got the right attention because he's got he's got that ferociousness that I've been reading about in a lot of the draft analysis on him. And I've seen him, as you said, like I've seen him in the top 5. I've seen him definitely top 10 in most of these things. So I think whoever's looking for that kind of edge, he's gonna be one of the guys to go to. I mean, he's competing right up there with Alabama's Will Anderson Jr., who's just a stud, who I've also had a chance to see play. So I think he's definitely he's made the right impressions, and I think especially coming out of Texas Tech, that is a hell of a rating. I mean, it helps, and I wonder how much of that was Tim DeRuyter as well, because I mean, I have to like at our CFB, we had him on during on one of these during the season. We do more interviews, and we had him on. It was just enjoyment because obviously he's a big former high school Texas coach along with trainer over at oh my God, UTSA, sorry. And but just looking at who assembled that coaching staff over at Texas Tech, I'm not surprised they won 8 games last season. So yeah, I do want to just go back to say Wyoming's going to have its hands full when they come up there. I mean, I have massive respect for Craig Bull, but that's going to be a tough one, especially going into the second season after a impressive first season at Texas Tech. You know, guys, I apologize. We usually wrap these up at about 30 minutes, so I'm going to slowly wrap us up here. I just wanted to thank all of you who joined us. Mark, Scott, my good old friend, Quinshawn is him. Gosh, I always mangle that. I feel so bad. In fact, as well as our other callers, I just wanted to thank you all. You're all a big reason why we have these every Tuesday night. This is our CFB Talk 136. My name is Bobak Hayeri. Otherwise, I will go ahead and sign off. So on behalf of all of us here, I'm going to hang up and listen.